To
Okay, so we are back, and today we are talking about spirituality because it is a hot topic, and we have some ideas we would like to share with you on that.
Yeah, I noticed a week ago I went to our local community center and a modern church was saying spiritual, not religious. And they obviously knew what target group they were going because everybody knows that church attendance and mosque attendance and temple attendance is dropping with the current generation. And spirituality in its many, many forms is dramatically increasing around the world. The whole world has changed so dramatically in the last 20 to 30 years that young kids are spending a huge amount of time, and old kids and adults on their smartphones and on their desktop screens and other forms of media, and the language that we speak is changing at a remarkably rapid rate. And so old institutions that speak about things that were current in the 19th or 20th century or even more centuries ago are having a hard time to communicate with a generation that doesn't have an idea what those things mean.
But that being said, there is still very much the desire to be spiritual, to be able to connect with that part of ourselves, and the assumption, the awareness that we are spiritual beings.
Right. I'm not saying there's a decline in spirituality. There's a decline of spirituality within churches simply because there's a decline in population in churches or mosques or temples or synagogues.
Interesting.
Well, churches have always encouraged spiritual practices.
Yes.
But if people aren't going to them, they're not going to get their spirituality in churches unless the churches adapt. And there are a few very modern churches who have adapted and who have much higher attendance. But most of them have stuck to their ancient ways of doing their services and in all religions. I'm not picking on Christianity in particular. It's just the religion I know most about.
Okay, so why do we need spirituality? Why is spirituality important?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And beyond saying that people just want it and are going to it and are very attentive to it, I would say there's 2 or 3 things that it does for us. The first one is it's a way to know ourselves. It's far better than taking a psychology course or anthropology or any number of other kinds of courses that doesn't concern who I am now. So that's what the question that people have been asking for hundreds and thousands of years. What am I made for? I mean, in one sense, you can say when we start out, if you observe my grandchildren who are, one is under 1 year old and 2 and 3, you might think that they are headed in the direction of a young chimpanzee. But by the time they get to 20 and they've gone through the schooling and the playgrounds and work experiences and everything else, we humans have a potential to be so much more. And by the time we hit 20, we haven't even begun to realize our full potential. And that's really what it starts off with. You could say it's also to find out what's wrong with us, what we're doing wrong. You know, like we may be doing too many drugs or alcohol, or we might be eating a very bad diet or not getting exercise, not having friends. There are all sorts of things. And if we don't understand our own self, our inner self, we're not going to enjoy this experience.
Right, and you're saying that is intrinsically connected with being spiritually in tune.
Right, or self-aware.
Self-aware.
And
but self-aware engages our spirituality, right?
Yeah, well, and one of the terms that has been used for spirituality is opening the doors of our perception. And what that means, perception is more than just the 5 senses. It's all our senses, including intuition and the right brain kind of senses of knowing things like, I this morning I sent you a text because you hadn't yet remembered about the filming today, but you were already thinking of it, and so you called me. Well,
Yes.
how does that work? It works all the time between people because we have ways of communicating that we don't understand. They don't fit in our scientific paradigm because they're not observable.
Right.
And
Yes.
so people just sort of
Go, oh, it's coincidence, and
whatever.
And I mean, a
but
huge amount of it
coincidence
could be.
happens so many hundreds of thousands of times.
Right.
You got to start asking. Well, maybe the scientific method alone is not the only way to figure this out. Some people take it even further and say we can relate to the entire spirit of the world. There are many different theories and concepts within religion and whatever about us being part of a global consciousness. And I'm not going to hold forth on that for this moment, except to say that there's even a further step of saying that we might be part of a cosmic consciousness that comes from a higher power, typically called God in much of the world, or Brahman, or the Tao, or other names for this kind of power so far beyond us that we don't even know how to describe it.
Yes, back to, because spirituality, if you're not acknowledging that you're a spiritual being, then you're taking out that really vital component, because it's a part of who we are innately. Like
well, it's our internal guidance system. It's our GPS. It's our horse sense. It's our our street smarts that helps us figure out when we're doing something wrong, or when we're doing something right, and it feels better.
Yes.
And it's a very quick, instantaneous one that you don't need to go to endless courses at expensive schools to learn. It's hardwired in our genetic opportunity.
I think it's less. It holds less. What's the word I'm looking for? Like when people think religion, when they think spirituality.
Rules and control. I mean, I think that's one of the things that any structure out there, people feel like they're being oppressed or whatever.
Whereas if you just go, oh, I'm spiritual, you're taking out all of those things that are
Although
connected
there
to.
is a little danger in that, and that is if you say I feel scientific, and I'm going to go out in my backyard, and you never learn anything of what's been done before, but you're going to be scientific just on your own.
Yes.
Well, you might turn into an Einstein, but as I understood it, he went to the highest level of study of the science around him before he went further on his own. And I think that is probably more true also of spirituality, that we do need to learn from other teachers.
Well, and I know you were saying earlier that logic can only take us so far. Our working brains are able to take us so far, but then we do need that other aspect of ourselves. I think the empathy, that's the spiritually in tune.
Well, let's just turn to the simple things like artists and musicians need to work together in order to bring out our capabilities. You could read 100 books on music and not get nearly as far as singing in a choir in a small group, playing musical instruments together.
Yes.
We do learn it from other people.
Yes.
It's not a individualistic pursuit. Rarely works that way.
So spirituality, that could be applied to spirituality too. That it's
that's
not
what I mean.
individualistic. That's actually really, I think I remember reading a book about. I keep talking about it, but it really challenged a lot of, ideas or just narratives that I had in my own mind about beliefs, about values, about spirituality and religion. Is that it was this book called about St. Francis of Assisi, and the Franciscan outlook is that it's not an individualistic pursuit. When you are trying to connect with the Creator, it's like it's not an individualistic, just you and me, God kind of thing. It's like it's something that's done together.
Yeah. Well, there have been saints through all ages, or you could say spiritual beings, or whatever. This is not a new phenomena, which is why I believe it's it's a very strong potential within all of us, and one that if we develop it, there's lots of wonderful things that come from it.